everything Stan Lee does, I'm into it. I think it's cool. The way if you watch one of the Stan Lee documentaries that are out there, it's really cool. And he's got all these pictures up on his office wall of all the different color combinations of all the characters. And that was just like my office. Man.
Yeah,
Remember, I had all the characters all over my office,
all over the place.
So what I was doing when I put all the characters up on the office was that, and Stan Lee did the same thing. He would create a color scheme based on what color scheme they needed. So like, okay, we got a green guy, we got a red guy, we got a blue guy, we need an orange guy. Okay. I am telling you right now, as a historical certainty, that's how Stan Lee did it. He because of the color, like, okay, Daredevil is yellow and red to start off, like, because he just needed that. But then he realized that was terrible, and then he switched them all to red.
Okay.
And so I'm telling you, the color scheme was the real thing, and I did the same thing. That's why the characters were all over the walls, and I said, okay, we need an orange guy. That's the interesting thing about the brilliance of Stan Lee. Really was writing the stories. Mm-hmm. You can make these. There's if you look on Pinterest or something, there's a bazillion superheroes and villains out there, but creating the stories to go with them really bring the characters to life, and that's the genius of Stan Lee. He was brilliant at writing. I mean, he was writing, 2-3 stories a day. He was doing it just to make money, but he could pump those out like nobody's business. And sometimes they were fantastic, sometimes they were goofy. But man, that guy could write, man.
You've told me so much about him over the years that I think what you've called the simplicity of Stan Lee's work in an admirable way. Maybe that comes from the fact that he would do it on the fly. Well, what's that? You need a new fur coat? Oh, let me go write a couple stories.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Does that contribute to the simplicity, you think?
That was exactly how he worded it in one of the documentaries. He would say, like, my wife would spend money, and I said, don't worry about it, honey. I'll make some stories up tonight, And he was the editor that bought the stories from other writers.
Right here.
So he would buy it from himself. You know what I mean? So he had a good situation going on there where he's the writer and the editor.
There's some shifty shit going on there.
Well, but I think it worked out pretty well for those guys. I tell you.
Well, those guys is part of the key too, right? Like his team around him that you've talked about so much, I think was a big contributing factor to that success.
Oh yeah, like Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby. Kirby was a genius. Really ahead of his time when it comes to the superheroes and stuff. He was much older than Stan Lee. Stan Lee was really just a kid when he started. I mean, when he wrote his first story, I think he was like 16 or something like that, which is, by today's standards, seems like, what are you talking about?
Right.
I'm telling you, he was like 16.
Still cutting the grass.
And then, Jack Kirby's,
I invented Superman.
listening to this kid, and I don't know, it just came together, man. And when he started creating the superheroes, that's when the sales started kicking up, and, then, because it's all about the dollars, right? They only went with what sold. Well, Stan Lee said, I'm going to do it my way, and let's try it. And they said, okay, and it sold, so it was great. It was fantastic. It was brilliant. And they sold a lot of comic books and just kept it going.
You mentioned Ditko, who maybe we should call the elusive Steve Ditko.
Well, Steve Ditko was a little bit strange. Historically, it's hard to get any information about who he was really. I mean, you're getting stories from other people, but I don't know if I've ever actually heard him, speak or read anything that he said about things. Now I know that there was a little, he had an input on who Spider-Man was. So Stan Lee went to Jack Kirby first and said, okay, draw me this guy that crawls in the walls. And Kirby drew him like Captain America, big, strong, superhero type. And then, Ditko that didn't work out. So then Stan's like, that's not right. And then he goes to Ditko because Ditko had this, his people were a little bit more scrawny in his comics and stuff. So that's exactly what Stan Lee wanted. He goes, I want you to draw it because I want him to look like a scrawny teenager, like this wimpy, nerdy, scrawny teenager. And that's going to be more powerful to the storyline, which, of course, inevitably, as history has it, it was fantastic. It worked out great.
That's amazing. How things come together sometimes on accident, You put so much effort into a direction you're trying to go in or a task you're trying to accomplish, and then something like that happens. He switches. Imagine if Stan Lee didn't switch the two of them. We would never have Spider-Man.
Well, Spider-Man, just would it look a little differently? That's all. And
But would it have hit? Is my point.
I
you know?
think
Maybe
so.
not.
I think so because it's about the story. It's not about the look of the character. I mean, Spider-Man could have been green, and he still probably would have hit because a nerdy teenager that's dealing with real world problems, but also dealing with the fact that he's got these superpowers. He can't tell anybody because he fears that his Aunt May is going to get in harm's way from the villains. So, he keeps his identity secret. So, it's that storyline is what I said earlier about the stories make the character. The characters don't make the stories. So, you want the characters to look cool, right? I mean, everybody wants their characters to look cool. But ultimately, it's the story. So, Spider-Man would have been a success if he was green and orange.